All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at Bet Online and number 38. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here to discuss NBA free agency, the Denver Nuggets, and what the hell is going on with Russell Westbrook. What a fascinating rumor that has come out and has sort of now captivated Nuggets fans and taken them by storm. I think everybody obviously has an opinion on Russell Westbrook, one of the most polarizing players, frankly, in NBA history. He is quite the guy, quite the player, and certainly a lightning rod for conversation. So we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about different plans that the Nuggets are trying to instill, whether this was actually plan A or not. And we'll talk about some other names as well, including DaRon Holmes and the rookie presser that he was a part of yesterday. If I podcasted yesterday, I was going to talk about it, but I didn't talk about it yesterday because I didn't podcast. So now we're going to go over it. We're going to talk about some stuff, and I am looking forward to everybody's takes on DaRon Holmes, because I have some too. But first, I want to tell everybody about Bet Online, the number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season, from baseball and golf, soccer, right on up to the top fights with UFC, MMA, and boxing. Head on over to Bet Online, use their promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% off bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Russell Westbrook. Let's talk about all of the things that are going down. And I know that there's a lot of discussion. It's going to be very, very interesting to see if Denver can actually get all this stuff done that they are talking about doing. But let's get into it. It's been glacial in the NBA free agency market so far. I thought that things would certainly free up after Paul George was signed, but the rest of the NBA is also kind of slow. Most of the main guys have gone, but there are still plenty of good players that are out there, including LeBron James, who will obviously be signing with the LA Lakers at some point, but Denver has 3 open roster spots. Now, sounds like at least one of them is accounted for, and maybe 2. Vlatko Cancar has been discussed a lot over the course of these last few days. I think it was when Denver decided that they were going to decline that club option that they had. I think it was a handshake agreement that they're going to bring him back. It's just kind of a waiting game. And Calvin Booth, who was not at the rookie DaRon Holmes presser yesterday, was in the air and is now currently abroad and in Europe, and was going to go see Vlatko and probably to go sign him to that contract. And she may be talking to some other folks too, including somebody that actually played against Vlatko today. But it sounds like the Vlatko deal is going to be done, so Denver has 2 roster spots remaining. One of them is for Vlatko, who has been on the roster for 5 years. I don't think people realize how long it's actually been, but he's been good. He looked good physically in FIBA today. Not necessarily like his most efficient shooting performance, but he's solid. He looks like he's capable, and given more time to play and get ready, it wouldn't surprise me if he was back and could give the Nuggets minutes next year. But the other name is obviously Russell Westbrook, who I know a lot of people are here for. A lot of people want to know what the hell is going on with Russell Westbrook. Why is that happening? What is the update? The rumor came out several days ago, and it's still there, still clearly there. I think that the Nuggets are currently weighing the different possibilities of how to add him to their roster, to their rotation, and they're trying to figure out how best to do it. And there are several different ways that they can. But first on Russ, I don't want to blow it out of proportion what kind of player he is. Like, he did have a pretty strong season with the Clippers when he first arrived there after I think he was he bought out? Was he traded? I think he was bought out he was traded to the Utah Jazz and then they bought out his contract. And then he went to the Clippers after that. Played pretty well in that role with the Clippers. Was pretty solid, kind of toned some things down, was still himself, but it is like you're still getting Russ at the end of the day for sure. But then he played this last year. Numbers came back down to earth a little bit. They added James Harden, still have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, lots of different ball handlers that you got to kind of account for. And he averaged 22 and a half minutes per game, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, shot like 27% from three, somewhere around there. Was solid from the field because he mostly just takes shots around the rim, tries some bank shots in the mid-range, things like that. But let's be honest with ourselves here. Russell Westbrook is fine. He's a slightly better player right now than Reggie Jackson. I do not think that he's significantly better. Reggie certainly has the advantage with shooting efficiency, turnovers, and the volatility that Russell Westbrook kind of brings. It can still be a potential pitfall for him, even if it can be a positive at times. What Russ would bring to Denver would be a better playmaker, better defender, and he sort of brings the edge that the Nuggets lost when Bruce Brown left. And there is something to be said. Like there's maybe no player in NBA history other than maybe Michael Jordan that has played with more edge than Russell Westbrook. Take that for what you will. And if that's a good thing, I don't know. But he would give them some of that oomph, that chutzpah that I was calling for this offseason. I think that they needed to add somebody that had a little bit of attitude, that had a little bit of swagger. And Russ plays like that for sure. So I brought it up before. How can the Nuggets actually add him? It's probably the biggest question in all of this. It's probably the biggest reason why it hasn't happened yet. Russ is he just opted into his player option, which is for just over $4 million. And there are several ways that the Nuggets can try to add him to their team, if that is the goal. And I think it's the goal. I think Jokic specifically is pushing for this. And I don't know what that says about Michael Malone. I don't know what that says about Jokic. I don't know what it says about the front office. But what I do know is that Jokic is pushing for this for sure. And he wants him. He wants him in town. And the Nuggets can do it in, I think, 4 different ways I've come up with. Number 1, they can trade 2 of their smaller contracts for him. Most likely Hunter Tyson and Jalen Pickett for Russell Westbrook. I think that makes a degree of sense, but if you're the Clippers, you want to save your roster spots, maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe they don't want to take any players back. They just want the flexibility to add the players that they want to add, not the players that the Nuggets are willing to part with. Number 2, the Nuggets could trade Zeke Naji and a 2031 first-round pick, get off of Zeke's contract for Russell Westbrook and Amir Coffey, and they fill an extra roster spot that way with a wing that could play a little bit of defense, that can shoot a little bit, fills kind of that KCP type of mold of a 3-and-D wing. Not necessarily, clearly not as good, obviously, but Amir Coffey's a good player. And the Clippers just added Derrick Jones Jr., so there is a possibility that maybe they don't need Amir Coffey, although they also just lost Paul George, so who knows? That's another one. I'm not sure if that's the right way to use Zeke Naji and then the 2031 first-round pick, but if you feel like the need to get off some money, that's one way to do it. Number 3, they can fold Russell Westbrook and the Clippers into that Charlotte trade that they did involving Reggie Jackson. All you got to do in that case is make the Clippers give up a protected second rounder to Charlotte. Charlotte would probably be amenable to that. They get a protected second round pick out of it. Probably nothing, but there's a possibility of something, an asset for free. And so if they did that, Denver could work that in to their deal. And rather than give up Reggie Jackson by himself, they get Russell Westbrook for him. And that to me would make some sense. That would make a degree of sense. Probably the easiest way to get this all done, but it involves the Clippers, and they would have to give up an asset to give up Russ. They may not want to do that. They may just want to deal with their own stuff. The fourth way, and the most painful way, would be using their taxpayer mid-level exception, which they can do. It is a legal thing that they can do now that they have the new CBA, is they can absorb Russell Westbrook's contract because he makes less than $5.18 million, and they can absorb his contract just using that. It doubles as an exception. That would be bad because then it would limit Denver's ability to add anybody else in free agency. They would lose that opportunity. They would only have minimum contracts left to offer, and that might be a problem when it comes to adding the 15th player, that what we haven't discussed yet. And if that's the case, then I kind of like option 3 personally, the one where you just fold Reggie's contract or Russ's contract into that deal, and then it makes logical sense to me. But I don't know why. Like, Charlotte may not feel super enticed to do that. The Clippers may not want to give up anything else, and that could be an issue. So there are pitfalls in each of the scenarios, but I think the one that's most advantageous for Denver, obviously, is that third option. But yeah, I'm very curious as to what Denver decides to do here. This is not done by any stretch of the word. Denver is going to try to do it. I was told that you should consider Russ as happening. But the way that it happens, I think, matters. And Denver should not settle for the least of the options, which in my opinion is using their taxpayer mid-level exception to just absorb him into that. That would be the second year in a row that they used it on what I think is a horrible option. Hypothetically, if they had just waited and had Reggie Jackson's salary on their roster, they could quite literally trade him back to the Clippers and acquire Russell Westbrook and do that deal. Now, whether the Clippers would be interested in that, I don't know. And I think it's fascinating that the Nuggets really weren't thinking about, I don't think they were thinking about doing anything like this until Nikola Jokic said something about it. So that is interesting. That is a layer to all of this that is still yet to be determined. There's a lot to kind of sift through here. And the Nuggets have plenty of pitfalls that they can fall into on this. But I do think that the best way for them to make this happen is to just try to make that a 3-team trade for Russell Westbrook. And then you've got Russell Westbrook on your team, which I'm not sure is a great option either. I do think that he is a slightly better player than Reggie Jackson, but there is a lot of volatility that I think really makes this problematic. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what they do. But look, could Russ help Denver? Sure. I gave you the layout for how he could absolutely do it. There are plenty of reasons why Denver could consider adding Russell Westbrook. There are also plenty of reasons why teams haven't. And there are plenty of reasons why it might not be the most ideal. Because it hasn't been ideal for many places basically ever. Think about ever since he left OKC, how many places have actually been happy with the way that the Russell Westbrook experience has gone? I think you're 0 for 4, 0 for 5. So is Denver really going to sell out for Russell Westbrook here? Maybe to please Joker. We'll see. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to go over that 15th roster spot, what Denver decides to do there. And then we'll talk about DaRon Holmes and the Nuggets rookie presser that Tommy Balchadis was at. And I asked him a very curious question about KCP that I'll make sure to bring up as well. We will be right back. But first, number 38 in Rhino, our home base for Mile High Sports. I think we've re-upped there for the football season. So if you're curious about this bar that I've been talking about, if you want to go hear Mile High Sports talking about football and talking about the Broncos, Bo Nix, and everything like that, and you want good food while you're at it, make sure to go head over to number 38, where they've got great food, great drinks, lots of things on tap, lots of great options. Loved my experience over at number 38. They give you a wristband. All you got to do is click that wristband up to their scanner, and then you can pay the bill at the end. It's very easy, very straightforward. Make sure to go check out number 38 in Rhino and let them know that you came from Mile High Sports. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would mean the absolute world. All right, let's talk now. And some folks are getting into the weeds on some interesting pickups that I think the Nuggets could be interested in with their 15th man. I don't think that it's set in stone that the Nuggets are going to go get Dario Saric. He's the name that keeps getting brought up as a 15th man. Because assuming Denver finds a way to add Flacco and Russ, they're going to have one roster spot open. And if Denver does keep that taxpayer MLE, they'll likely target a big man, somebody that they can play immediately. It doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me to have Jokic, DeAndre Jordan, Dario Saric, DaRon Holmes, and Zeke Naji. Like 5 bigs out of 15 roster spots. That feels like a lot. Probably feels like you only need 4. And so maybe they still work to try to trade Zeke. Maybe there's something else that they could do. But I do think that Denver, like they're trying to keep that taxpayer MLE free so that they could use it as a chip. And Sarge would be good. Like he'd be a good player. He just had a triple-double versus Slovenia in the Olympic qualifier. He is a smart player. He's a better passer than Zeke Naji. He's a better shooter, more consistent, has a little bit more game, more touch, not as good of a defender, still a little bit slow coming off of the torn ACL injury that he had. But he is a smart player who can run the DHO and who can shoot. Those are for sure skills of his. So he would be interesting. If it's not Saric, though, it could be Daniel Tice, and it could be somebody else. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily perfectly optimal for Denver to trade or to sign a big man. Like I said, they already have 4. Do they need 5? Obviously, DeAndre is not going to be a big-time player for them, but you want to play DaRon Holmes. You don't want to bury him on the depth chart. So is there another way that they can sort of balance out their roster? And there's a couple of other reasons why I think Denver could try that. I think that it would be wise, and they kind of backed themselves into this a couple years ago when they added Bruce Brown. Holding off on using that taxpayer mid-level exception just in case a free agent kind of falls through the cracks a little bit. If you remember, Denver didn't sign Bruce Brown until day 2 of free agency. Money significantly dried up in day 1. And then Denver was like, hey, Bruce Brown's still out there. See if he's interested. Turns out he was. Turns out it was a perfect fit. And Denver got a guy that they couldn't have gotten. Like, had they tried to sell him on the taxpayer MLE day 1 of free agency. So there are players out there that come to mind that might be interesting for the taxpayer MLE if they fall through the cracks. Because I think one thing that stands out to me is one of these players, like they could see that one KCP is out of Denver and there's an opening for playing time. But two, so you want to get an opportunity to be a free agent in 2025 when the cap goes back up. Getting all that TV money, getting all the opportunities to see that cap explode a little bit, I can see some of these guys being like, hey, 1+1, see if I could get back out there on free agency. But in the meantime, we're going to play for a championship contender, and I'm going to try to be your Bruce Brown this year. I could see some teams doing that. I could see some players doing that. Precious Achiuwa comes to mind. He got like his cap hold was declined, or his restricted free agency was declined by the Knicks in their momentum to try to get Mikal Bridges, to try to free up enough money to retain Isaiah Hartenstein. I don't know what they're going to do with their second center because Isaiah Hartenstein is now in OKC. But if they don't re-sign Precious Achiuwa and he's looking for too much money, maybe he doesn't find it. And maybe he's a guy that Denver could bring in. Yeah, he would be competing directly with DaRon Holmes, but Achiuwa is still pretty young and still pretty good. So would give Denver some athleticism, some switchability, and I think would be a pretty good player for them. But there are other players that I think make even more sense kind of on the perimeter. Demar Derozan is probably signing for more than this. But what if Chicago's like, no, we're good? Who is the DeMar DeRozan team out there? The Clippers just use their taxpayer mid-level, or the non-taxpayer mid-level. Maybe it's the Lakers. Would the Lakers use their MLE if they could free up some space? Is that the right fit? Who is the team for DeMar DeRozan? And could it be the Nuggets? Is that a good fit? I don't know. I think DeMar is way too talented to be accepting a $5 million contract. But if he uses this as an opportunity to take a 1+1, get back out there on the market, and then be, I guess, a non-taxpayer mid-level kind of guy going forward, there's some interesting things there. I don't think that it's happening. I wouldn't expect DeMar to sign for this level of money. So I wouldn't get your hopes up, people. But at least, like, that's the thing that Denver should be shooting for. They lost some talent with KCP. They should be trying to recoup some talent, especially in the form of a veteran player that can contribute right now. So if it's not DeMar DeRozan, what about Gordon Hayward? Probably not at the same level, obviously, as a DeMar DeRozan, but still capable of playing. Caleb Martin could be a 3-and-D option that falls through the cracks. I expect him to probably go back to Miami for a slightly increased number than what he left there, which was about $7 million. So he's probably looking at $10 million, probably not looking at $5 million, but maybe he's a name that could be of consideration. Miles Bridges, as unsavory as that would be, there's a name that I guess, like, he's a free agent. I am not condoning signing Miles Bridges, but he is also out there. And then you get to some of the wings, players that I think could replace KCP a little bit more equitably. Gary Trent Jr. is a popular name that comes up. Gary Trent would be very, very interesting because he is also pretty sure he's also a Clutch client, if I'm not mistaken. And he got an odd deal with the Raptors when he signed it. Not sure it was a great deal. And now maybe this is an opportunity for him to take a 1+1, and then he would be Denver's starting shooting guard. Calvin Booth might hate that, but Gary Trent Jr., not the worst option in the world to be a stopgap shooter. He's also a capable defender, so maybe there's something there. Luke Kennard with Memphis. He opted out of the team option was declined for him. There is interest in bringing him back from Memphis, but who knows? Maybe there's not enough playing time for him, and he would like to come to a place like Denver. Would you do a Malik Beasley reunion? Would that be interesting to people when Denver needs as much shooting as they can get? I very much doubt that the Nuggets would be kosher with a Malik Beasley reunion, but that's the kind of shooting that you could certainly get. Taylor Horton Tucker and Isaac Okoro. Those guys are a little bit more defensive options. Horton Tucker could be that defender that they need. Wasn't really a great defender in Utah, but I think he's capable of kind of tapping back into that in a competitive situation. Okoro, obviously a great defender, but he is more so like he is basically Christian Braun in a lot of ways, where Braun is not really this capable, awesome shooter all the time. I think I'd like to just keep developing Braun if I were Denver, but Okoro's a name. Alec Burks, veteran name, CU. Maybe he would be interested. And you get to some point guards. What if they don't get Russell Westbrook? Can I interest you in 1 year of Markelle Fultz? What about 1 year of Spencer Dinwiddie? How would those two fit as Denver's second unit creators? Fultz, I think, would be fascinating. He could get into the paint. Not a shooter, but I think he's capable, and he's probably worth way more than what Denver can get or can give him. But if these guys are interested in getting back out on the market, who knows? Noam Chomsky asks, is actually, that is not what I tried to throw up on the screen. That comment just came through. Is Tyus Jones gettable? The answer is probably no. I think that he like the target number that he was looking for was 15 million to 17 million. I think some team will give him that or something close to it. One of the best backup point guards on the market, borderline starter, not necessarily a great starter, but I don't think that he's gettable. Damn. That Dinwiddie comment was funny. Yeah, I wouldn't go for Dinwiddie. I think that Russ is a better player, if I'm being honest. Not necessarily an awesome fit, but Russ is still a better player. Hey, there's the cat there. Hello. Thank you. Hope you guys heard that. All right, where was I? So if I was to say, let's say that Denver does get Vlatko and Russ, and I'll let me answer this one. Kyle Lowry not going to be coming to Denver. I think he's going back to Philly. I think they're trying to decide exactly how they're going to do it, but I think he's coming back to Philly. So if Denver added, let's say they went through and they added the three of Vlatko, Russ, and Dario Saric. Is that good enough? Is that a good enough team? Is that smart? Like, and as I wrote on the side here in the main topics, was this plan A? Was this what the Nuggets were trying to do? And to me, that's a fascinating question in and of itself, because I'm just not sure that this is a good plan. I think that there are a lot of people that feel that same way within the organization, that they're not entirely sure that this was smart, especially with where Denver's going. I'm endlessly fascinated by this. I don't know how this is going to work, but I put out that depth chart and that rotation earlier today on Twitter. And I basically said 10-man rotation. You've got the starters plus with Brown in there. Then you've got Russell Westbrook, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, DaRon Holmes, Dario Saric. I put together a rotation, was like, how many wins is this getting? And the general consensus was like low 50s. Some people were higher, some people were lower. Low 50s, which would be a step back for Denver. They just won 57 games. Now, might not be the worst idea in the world for them to take a step back from an energy standpoint and then like lose some more games intentionally, just like not selling out their body, trying to earn MVP. That's not fair. Trying to play every single game because you can. I don't think that this is necessarily a great deal. I don't think this is necessarily what Denver should have been going for. I think this is kind of what they've had to back themselves into doing, and that's a different thing for sure. But to me, on the outside, it just doesn't feel like this team is in a good place. You lose KCP, you lose Bruce Brown in successive years. The team has been preaching internal development, possibly because there's no other option, really. Bro. Scratching the bed. Has the team gotten better or worse over the course of these last 2 years? I think is a very reasonable question. And that's just not super exciting for a team that's trying to compete for a championship in Nikola Jokic's prime. That's a lot. That's a lot of a burden. And the other thing, the Jamal Murray extension isn't final yet. That's true. The Shams tweet was so fascinating to read and then reread and then to figure out. The Murray extension hasn't happened yet. And there are reasons for that, I think. But it's very, very interesting that it hasn't happened yet. And I wonder when or if it does. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll happen. But it hasn't happened yet. All in all, nothing is sunshine and rainbows right now. There's a lot more pressure in all directions than I think people really understand. And that is, I think, a very fascinating aspect for what this team kind of looks like going forward. Is this going to be a continuation of last year where Denver just kind of loses one of their main rotation players, a couple main rotation players, and then tries to replace them? And especially going young? Or are they going to pivot? Are they going to try to bring in some more vets and try to figure it out? I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. But I think that the Nuggets are... I think there's more going on than people understand. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to discuss the DaRon Holmes presser, some things that came out of that, and then some interesting things. And I wanted to spend more time on DaRon Holmes because I have not done so enough. But we should... Bro, stop it. We will be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. This motherfucker is just so very aggro right now. What do you want? We're back. Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. All right. DaRon Holmes, very interesting addition. And somebody that I think I was interested in getting to meet. Unfortunately, the KCP news, I think, was very distracting. And that presser, I think, because Tommy Balcetis was there, not Calvin Booth, it ultimately kind of was, it was very interesting, intense presser, and not a lot of confidence, I think, coming from the org. But I thought that was fascinating. And learning about Holmes was interesting. There's no doubt about it. Not as brash and overconfident as I kind of thought he would be just based off of his style. I thought that he would be a little bit more, not aggressive, but a little bit more, not sure of himself. I guess just saying stuff, just very, very out there. Now, he was nice and respectful and was a good quote and was pretty funny. But when he was asked about what he wants to work on in the NBA, he said basically everything. Didn't really give a specific thing. And that's kind of the run-of-the-mill answer that you get from a lot of these guys because they don't necessarily want to tell about their strengths. They would like to just talk about what they are, like how they can continue to get better in the league, and they just want to continue to improve everything, which it's understandable. He was also asked, and both of these questions were by Adam Morris, who had some good questions here. Asked about what his goals are in the NBA, he said, just get better every day and win. That was his general sentiment there. Tommy was curious about, or he was sharing some stuff about DaRon and just the way that he continues to play. He talked about his free throws and how he was very aggressive getting to the free throw line a lot. And maybe that's something that he could do at the NBA level. Denver, of course, needs somebody who can be a free throw guy because Jokic doesn't get there as much as some of the main stars. And then nobody on the roster. I was going over this, and I tweeted this on Michael Porter Jr.'s birthday, and that was not very salient of me. But Michael Porter, among all players that average at least 16 points per game over the last 20 years, has the lowest free throw attempt rate outside of Klay Thompson back in 2018, which I thought was fascinating. Like, think about it from the perspective of what Denver needs and how they could really help themselves. The Warriors did not need any help from an offensive standpoint. They could just jack up whatever they wanted, and they would be fine. The Nuggets, I think, need guys that can get to the free throw line and make them. And maybe DaRon Holmes could do that. Maybe he could do a little bit of that for sure. But the most interesting tidbit, and it was kind of wasn't this big thing, but to me the most interesting tidbit was that only Julian Strawther has reached out among current Nuggets, which I think is fascinating. DaRon Holmes, big moment, really looking forward to being a pro. The only guy that's actually reached out to him personally is Julian Strawther, and then he met Hunter Tyson in the locker room. Like, okay, that was unexpected, I would say. Like, I'm not expecting Zeke Naji to reach out to him because Zeke's probably like, they just drafted my replacement. Jokic, I know, is in Serbia. He will never do that. It's just never a thing. Jamal didn't. Mike didn't. Aaron? None of these guys? Interesting. So, what will Holmes bring in his rookie season? What will he bring? I think it depends on what Malone decides, what the Nuggets stars want, like how they want to build their rotation, more than anything else. The good thing about Holmes is that he's versatile. He's capable of doing a variety of different things, and he could play the primary backup center. He could slide over to backup power forward. Spacing gets a little bit cramped if you're adding Russell Westbrook, and then let's say you're playing Saric, and then you're playing Peyton Watson, and then you're playing Holmes. That is a lot of size. Not necessarily a great cohesive team, great cohesive unit. So I would kind of guard against that. I think the best thing for him is to play him next to P-Watt, where Holmes is the 5 and P-Watt is the 4, or to play him next to a guy, let's say it's Saric, to play him next to a guy like Saric, where he's the 4, and then he's playing next to, say, Julian Strawther or Michael Porter at the 3, guys that can really space the floor, really shoot. That would be good. That would be, I think, a good way to use him. You do not have to play him every single night, nor obviously do I think Michael Malone would like to do that. He doesn't want to be pressured to playing more young players than he already has to. But yeah, I like the idea of Denver adding a big man like Saric, finding another home for Zeke, and then maybe dividing the backup center minutes between Holmes and Saric. That way neither has to play every night. You can keep guys fresh. You have different options. And then other things could happen and DeAndre Jordan plays, but I don't think that is the answer. But look, man, Denver's in a really weird place. There's a really weird team right now. And without just getting too into the weeds here, the fact that the team, like, you used to hear about the Nuggets reaching out to all these guys and being like, hey, so excited to have you on the team. Maybe they will. Maybe it's just a timing thing. Maybe they'll all get into the gym. But I'm looking forward to watching DaRon Holmes play personally. I think he'll be very good. If it's Jalen Pickett and DaRon Holmes at Summer League, that'll be fun. Hunter Tyson. I don't think that Julian Strawther will play, but hey, who knows? Maybe Julian Strawther will play. And like he has been in town. He's been in Denver. So maybe he's a guy that plays only for a couple of games and then you get to see it. And then you've got Trey Alexander and PJ Hall, who were actually at that DaRon Holmes presser. Didn't introduce myself. It was like, we'll have plenty of time over the course of these next couple of days. There will be some summer league practices. There will be some stuff. That'll be good. But going to be fascinating. Like I said, this team is not done. Obviously, the roster's not complete. People think that it's going to be Russ. They think it's going to be Vlatko. They think it's going to be somebody like a Saric. Whether it is or not, that remains to be seen. And I know Nuggets fans are feeling the pressure. Over the course of this next week, I'm going to talk to Matt Moore. We'll get him on here. We'll talk about whether Denver's so much worse that their championship hopes are over, which teams did really well in free agency. We'll talk for sure. I'm definitely talking to my guy, Jeff Morton. We'll be doing a half Summer League podcast, half Nuggets podcast, but mostly just talk about other stuff. That'll be fun. And then we're going to just vibe out. This summer's going to be interesting. I am moving over the course of this month. So probably not going to be like a million podcasts. I will podcast whenever news comes out, obviously. But I can definitely see myself taking a little bit of a step back over the course of the rest of July. But while things continue to go on, you'll definitely get more information from me. So I hope everybody has a great day. Hope we get some good news for the Nuggets soon. That'll make things a lot easier. Hopefully everybody takes a little chill pill. That'll be good. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at number 38 and Bet Online. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. Would really, really appreciate it. I will talk to you guys very soon.